welcome to this episode of Spirit Plant Medicine. We are here to really talk about the conference and introduce some of our speakers and have a roundtable discussion with my good friend Stephen Gray. My name is Marc Caron, one of the organizers of the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, and we're happy to be on this call today to talk about what's happening in the world of psychedelics and how we can change the world. So Stephen, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, thanks, Marc. Yeah, so we've been talking to some of the speakers for our conference, and in this particular case, I wanted to see if we could pull together some of our, whatever you might call them, Indigenous. In Canada, we often call them First Nations people. In America, it's often Native Americans, for mostly the simple reason that, as many people I hope will understand, the people from those backgrounds and communities often are party to a lineage of understanding, however threadbare it may have become over the centuries, that is absolutely necessary for the wider world to hear. And so three of our speakers at the conference have graciously agreed to join us today. And I'm going to read you a very quick bio for each one of them. Actually, before I do that, I just want to tell you the format that we're going to use, just so you know. We're going to call on each one of our three guests to speak for a bit on one question, which is, what do you see as the role of psychedelic sacraments for a world in crisis and transition? And I've told them they can wax eloquent on that and take it where they feel like they need to go. So having said that, I'm going to read a quick bio about each of them in turn, and then we're going to call on the first of our speakers. Actually, I didn't finish. After that little period, we're going to have an open discussion with them, and then they'll have a summing statement later. So, Hereditary Chief Phil Lane is an enrolled member of the Ihanktawa, Dakota, and Chickasaw nations, and is an internationally recognized leader in human, community, and economic development. During the past 48 years, Chief Lane has worked with Indigenous peoples from North, Central, and South America, Micronesia, Southeast Asia, India, Hawaii, and Africa. He served 16 years as an associate professor at the Faculty of Education at the University of Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. Belinda Eriacho is of Diné and Ashiwa, which is Pueblo of Zuni, descent. She was born and raised on the Navajo Reservation located in Arizona. Belinda is the wisdom carrier, healer, and founder of Kalogi, excuse me if I didn't pronounce that correctly, LLC, focused on cultural and traditional teaching, inner healing, as well as an international speaker on various topics impacting Native American communities in the United States. Belinda is also a founder and board member of the Church of the Eagle and the Condor, program advisor for Naropa University, and a Native American traditional advisor for Sound Mind. And our third guest today is Ariana Fotinakis. She is of mixed Anishinaabe and Greek descent. As a trauma-informed somatic coach, breathwork facilitator, and shamanic practitioner, she uses breathwork, somatic healing, drumming, and sacred psychoactive plants to help her clients rekindle their connections to self and the land. So I'd like to welcome all three of you on behalf of Marc and the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, and we would like to call on you to speak to this question first, Chief Phil.
Well, I want to give everybody a very warm and loving handshake. Say it's a great honor and pleasure to be here and share about how important our Indigenous medicines are at this time of human history. We know we are in a tremendous crisis as a human family. And what is most needed at this time for us to understand is that we're one human family, for human beings to understand the oneness of all life, the prior unity and oneness of all life, human family, and the hurt of one is the hurt of all, and the honor of one is the honor of all. And I want to say that I really believe, like so many gifts our Indigenous people had to give to the world, that not only the psychedelics, but those medicines that are being drawn from our Indigenous plant medicines, clairgenics, is another whole stage of development that is assisting the human family at this point to understand oneness. Oneness is key to peace. Oneness is key for us to come to understanding with each other that we're all relatives. We're all relatives of one human family. As well, we have to become aware that we each have a soul. We have to become aware there's a spiritual world we live in. And these indigenous medicines, which kept us living in relative peace and harmony, while the rest of the world was going through tremendous loss of life from war, from you name it, it was happening, more or less, in comparison. I'm not saying we didn't have conflict, but we lived in relative peace and harmony. And most people don't understand, for instance, in this peace and harmony, we not only have domesticated all these plant medicines, now humanity is beginning to understand, we domesticated 80% of all the food being eaten upon Mother Earth today. So if it wasn't for our food, the world wouldn't be where it is today. Not only that, and I want to compare this to what's happening now with our plant medicines, it was also the discovery of the gold and silver here and, of course, in Africa that gave the world an actual system for bartering. That went before bartering, a currency system. And so now at this epigenic time of humanity where we have to come together, we have no choice. If we do not come together, we're going to destroy ourselves because Mother Earth's not sick, we're sick. And with these sacred medicines, if they're used in a sacred manner, and that's one of my main concerns, I think these were medicines, many of them, ayahuasca, for instance, coming from the community, communities in the Amazon. And these medicines are tremendously powerful, and it takes people with tremendous integrity in every dimension to be able to administer these medicines. So I just say this, that more and more we're seeing that humanity is waking up. They're now legalizing step by step these sacred medicines. And you in this conference that you've been having over and over again, bringing this message is so, so important to this spiritual awakening that's happening on Mother Earth. And it is a spiritual awakening because we are spiritual as well as physical beings. And this is what these medicines help us to understand. They help us understand our soul. They help us understand what's within us. If only from within are we going to make the changes needed to change this world so we're not in such a state as we are now, which is really, it's so pitiful to see us as human beings, one family, intimately related, in oneness, killing each other. So that's why, for me, these both psychedelic and cryogenics, which is a whole new breakthrough that comes from combining these medicines together and really understanding that science and spirituality are becoming one. But science without spirituality becomes a Frankenstein. At the same time, spirituality without reason becomes fanaticism. So I just want to congratulate you on this incredible conference we're all going to be joining in. I look forward to meeting everybody. I look forward to hearing my other sisters here share. I think there's 3 other sisters going to share. Maybe there's a brother there. I look forward to it, and I thank you. Aho.
Thank you. And I'm glad you said aho to clarify the end. Thanks a lot, Phil. And next we're going to call on Belinda Eriacho. Go ahead, Belinda, please.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you for organizing this conference. It's going to be my first time coming to Canada and to really get to know my First Nations brothers and sisters and, kind of hear their perspective on this. I guess I have a little bit of a different perspective with regards to psychedelic sacraments. Being that I am in the United States, there are only really 3, if you will, sacraments. That includes ayahuasca from the churches of Santo Daime and UDV, peyote from the Native American Church, and now with the state of Oregon just recently passing its Measure 109, it'll soon to be psilocybin. And so, from Indigenous perspective, sacraments is really part of our ceremony, And we really need to think about that. And I think that's one of the things that I find as I travel the world is that a lot of people are looking for a place to belong. They're looking for community. And this is one of the ways to bring people together. I like what my Shania, my older brother, Chief Phil had mentioned about, we can't forget that we are all part of each other, just as we are part of the plants that are here to heal us. And we really need to make sure that we are respectful of them, that we give them the reverence that they need for the healing that they're offering us and our species. If we want our world to transition to a new type of being and coexisting with one another, we really need to do our inner work as well. We are all being called at this time to really go within ourselves and reawaken ourselves to who we truly are and remembering who we are as spiritual beings, as Chief Phil had indicated earlier. And I think this is a time to do that, and we can do that together. We mustn't forget about the shared history that we all have been through. And, we weren't there at the time when a lot of this historical events happened, but we are here now. We are the ancestors that we've been waiting for. And we are the ones that really need to set the stage and change the narrative for our children and our grandchildren going forward. One of the things that's really important as well is, as we start to look at and to borrow and to utilize these sacred plant medicines from the guardians and the stewards that have held these medicines for eons, we need to make sure that there is sacred reciprocity involved with this as well. There's always this, in my Diné culture, they call it sha, give me, always wanting to take for yourself. And we're really, really forced to really honor that and really look at it from a collective perspective. It's not just about us. When I make decisions that really impact my community, I think of first and foremost about my grandchildren and those that I will never see in my lifetime, and really making the right decisions that are going to be for the longevity of humankind. And so those are just some of my thoughts in regards to the question that's been asked.
Thank you for those beautiful words, Belinda. Thank you very much. And we'll follow up with some of these thoughts, in the discussion period. And now we would like to call on Ariana Fotinakis to say a few words on this question, please, Ariana.
Yeah, miigwech for the opportunity and just for the this conference that you've put together. And I'm really excited to be a part of this and very honored to be here with everybody. And I want to echo a lot of what both Philip and Belinda have already spoken to around this idea of oneness between all of our human, but also all of our non-human kin, our animal friends, our plant relatives, the rocks, the waters. And so often we hear this true understanding of oneness as being one of the primary experiences that comes as a result of journeying with sacred medicines. But I also have clients and individuals who I work with who experience that from breath work and from dropping into more of a trance state with drumming. And, it's pretty hard to continue to destroy something when you realize that you are that thing. And so when we can tap into these states that allow us to feel this oneness, that allow us to recognize that the plants, that their lives are just as important as the human beings, and that our animal friends, that they're just as important as the plants, and there's really no hierarchy here. It invites in more consciousness in how we relate to these things. And perhaps as a little side thing, I have a lot of friends who are very active in like the vegan and the vegetarian communities, and will often talk about the importance of not consuming animal products. And I think that there's a way to engage it with all of our food that recognizes the value and the life that is inherent in all of these beings, both animals and plants and all of the things. And I believe that the more we can bring that awareness into the foods that we eat, the products that we purchase or don't purchase, the ways we go about receiving those things. So maybe ordering from Amazon less and finding things that are already within circulation and continuing to use discernment around what it is that we actually need to acquire, and maybe things that we don't need to acquire, so that we are ultimately consuming and extracting less from our Mama Earth. And something else, which is along a similar topic, but I'll separate it simply for ease of use, is when we can engage in these practices that allow us to do our healing work. It's this internal work with self that needs to be done before we go out into the world and before we become advocates for healing within the communities and healing within the planets. You know, we all, regardless of our backgrounds, whether we have ancestors that were colonizers or we have ancestors that were colonized, we all carry the pain from each of those experiences. And so what needs to be reconciled within each and every one of us before we go out into the world and do our good work for reconciliation? And for some of us, that looks like processing the grief and the rage from all that was taken from us in our lineages, and also in celebrating the joy and the resilience that lives within our lineages. And then for others, it may look like processing the grief that comes with being bystanders to what went on, or perhaps even having a hand in demonizing and extracting and just attempting to destroy cultures and communities, because that is not within the true human nature. And so even if people thought that maybe they were doing the right thing, their soul knew that they weren't acting in a way that was aligned with their true spirit. So we all have our own personal healing work to do, and sacred psychedelic medicines are not the only way to do that healing work, but they are a way for sure. And I'll again echo what Belinda said, just around the importance of engaging in right relationship with these medicines and ensuring that there's the terms of decolonization and the terms of indigenization. And indigenization is when we're returning to these indigenous practices and ceremonial ways. And it's really important that we allow the process of indigenization to be undertaken by Indigenous folks. And to also, you know, if Indigenous folks decide to share those with their community, then that's wonderful as well. But I think what really comes to mind here is honoring the communities where these medicines are borrowed from, and ensuring that we are giving back to those communities and engaging in a good way. So there are many, many thoughts that are coming to mind, but I think those are the ones that I'll speak to for now. So miigwech for listening.
Thank you. Damn, beautiful. Thank you very much. So, so now we're going to enter into our sort of free-form discussion segment of this conversation, and I can easily, I have 2 or 3 questions running through my mind, but I don't want to ask them if any of you have comments or questions like for each other in particular. I mean, for the 3 of you. So, Phil, can you hear us? Are you there? We're not seeing you on the camera at the moment. Phil?
Yeah, I can hear you right now. Yeah,
okay, great. So do any of the 3 of you want to either ask a question of one of the other 2 or come in with a follow-up comment to anything that was said by yourself or the other 2?
I think one of the things that I'd like to add, I think that we all touched on, was kind of just doing this own self-inner healing of ourselves. But I think one of the things that, as my talk at the conference will be, is the title of my talk is called Turning of the Soil. And that could be an analogy for a lot of things. But in particular, with regards to the Renaissance, psychedelic Renaissance, one of the things that comes to mind, at least more from my experience, is it's also resurfacing this intersection between traditional wisdoms and psychedelic space. Things like cultural appropriation is a big conversation that needs to be had. The other one is about policy reforms and policy making without the input of Indigenous people. And to me, those are really spaces that we all need to change that narrative and be inclusive of those conversations. And some of those conversations are difficult ones. But if we don't have them, how can we really change anything? And so I wanted to also bring that point up as well.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from you, Ariana or Phil?
Something
Go ahead.
You've
Yeah.
unmuted. Go ahead.
Speak.
Phil?
Right. I think the whole issue of reciprocity is so important. Communities in the Amazon, these communities, other places, have given so much to help heal the human family, and they are suffering tremendously. I think we have to be able to, if we're giving Thanksgiving for these medicines, return and support our relatives in the Amazon and other places that are in fact sharing these medicines so kindly and so beautifully. And I understand this thing about cultural appropriation and so forth. So anyway, just those thoughts.
Thank you. And Ariana, you seem to want to share something or ask something?
Yeah, I had something to piggyback off of what Belinda had mentioned. And Belinda, you emphasized that these are maybe difficult conversations to have around consulting Indigenous communities when doing policies and bringing these practices in. And these are uncomfortable conversations to have. And this is something that I'll speak to in my talk on Sunday, is the willingness to be uncomfortable and to perhaps say the wrong thing and to ask questions and maybe make ourselves look a little silly and like we don't have all of the answers, and to be open to doing that. Because colonization really has led us to believe that we need to have all of the answers and we need to put our best foot forward and show up in a certain way, and that there's no room for error or for mess or discomfort. And so a big part of our healing work is to be willing to say or do the wrong thing. You know, I have so many people in my community who want to make a change in the world. They want to be more inclusive of our Black, Indigenous, and people of colors. And they don't know what to do. They're frozen because they're worried about doing the wrong thing. And a huge part of decolonization is being willing to say the wrong thing and do the wrong thing and take accountability for that and learn, and to then make the right choices moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So, Belinda, Phil, do you have any follow-up comments to that, or anything that's been said, or questions for each other? Okay, then I have one for you guys. Excuse me. As we mentioned, the subtitle of the conference is the role of psychedelics for a planet in transition. So you all three have spoken to the larger perspective, as I understood your comments. Can each of you say anything about why the plants? There's lots of ways to wake up and heal, traditionally in all cultures. What is it that these medicines actually do? How do they help? Can someone take that one?
You know, I think there's two different perspectives, at least from my own personal experience. There are the natural plants. My sense is that when I partake in them, there is a spirit that you interface with and you work with. The synthetics are a little bit different. And my experience as well is for both the synthetics and as the natural medicines is that they each work in a different place. They work on different parts of you, different parts of your soul when they're healing you. And I think, it depends on the individual and what they're searching for and what they're looking for. I think that goes a long way with intentions. From a recreational standpoint, that doesn't happen. You're just taking it just for the pure pleasure of taking it. Whereas if you're taking it more in a ceremonial context, there's intentions behind that when you take the medicine. So whether they're the synthetics or the natural medicines. And I think that's something we all need to keep in mind as well.
Okay. Ariana, can you answer that question that I just put out?
Yeah, definitely. So, one of the things that I love about working with these medicines is that you receive what you need, and it's not always what you want. And oftentimes I will go into a ceremony or into a journey, even with breath work or with my drum, thinking that this is what I need to work with today. And this is what I'm hoping to experience. And sometimes I experience the complete opposite because that's what I needed in order to find the clarity or the peace or the whatever it may be. And so it really invites us to leave our egos at the door. And what a beautiful practice for how we can go about in our day-to-day lives, in learning to surrender to what is being asked of us and what is being shown to us. It was in a medicine ceremony where, I've heard this word surrender so many times, and people always talked about it in the spiritual community. And it was something that logically I understood, but I didn't fully understand within my being what it meant to surrender. And it was within a medicine ceremony where I learned, oh, well, this is what surrender doesn't feel like. And this is what it does feel like.
Yeah.
And we can take those learnings then and hopefully apply them to our day-to-day. And again, if we're looking at this from perhaps getting uncomfortable, needing to make changes with how we show up in the world, how we engage with the natural world and with others in our communities, when we learn to embrace and move through the discomfort and surrender, and at the same time embrace the joy and the bliss that is available to us within these medicinal experiences, it can bring a little bit more ease to doing that when we're out in the 3D world, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So, Phil, can you hear me?
Yes, most certainly.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this was going to be a recording of I thought we were just going to visit about a byline for the conference.
Oh, yeah.
I'm jumping out of my car so I can stop the noise there. So anyway.
No problem. Excuse me a sec, Phil. Can I make it a two-part question for you? The question again is, how and why the psychedelics actually help. But with you, because you mentioned this clerogenics, I don't think most people know, and I don't either, what they are. And maybe you could address that as well.
Well, I really believe this gift our Creator has given to our human family, but in the hands of those who really, really understand how to use these plant medicines, a way to really heal our soul, to heal our inner being. And we're carrying so much intergenerational trauma. Our entire human family is carrying intergenerational trauma. And this is a way to address this intergenerational trauma. Yes, there's pain in this journey sometimes, but it's about getting rid of this pain, this intergenerational trauma that we carry. Cryogenics is really a distillation of a variety of plant medicines: marigold, sassafras, tomato, and of course we use a little bit of psilocybin. And this is only about a 3.5 hour journey, and yet we found that it's very gentle, very safe for elders in their 80s. And you talk with your soul, and you can move through about 10 years of therapy in 3.5 hours. I know that sounds way out there, but this is something I think that is it's kind of like when you create an alloy. You take two metals. One might have a tensile strength of 10, the other might have a tensile strength of 15, meaning that's what it takes to pull them apart. And you combine them and you think, oh, they have a tensile strength of 12.5, but instead they have a tensile strength of 1,000 or 100 or 500. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so what we're finding in working with science as well as with our spiritual dimension, because that's so important for any of these journeys, you want to have a spiritual foundation, because you can only take people as far as you are. But with cryogenics, I believe what we have is a distillation of our plant medicines that can be utilized in a very, very safe manner. We also involve very much the medical profession in this whole process, who also have experienced what this is all about. So that's a little bit about cryogenics. I'll speak more about at the conference about these things.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hey, Marc, have we missed any important questions that you want to ask?
Well, I've been taking notes, so there's a lot that I've got, but one of the things that I wanted to really ask, and Chief Phil, this was from what I got from one of the things you had talked about, was the importance of us all coming together as humanity. And I'm be curious what you think the biggest obstacle is right now, what's holding us back, and what the solution is. And I know that, the topic is psychedelics and plant medicines, but what else is there? What can we do as as each human being to really be part of the solution?
Well, first of all, I think we have to understand that the soul has no ethnicity, has no gender, has no class, which makes any form of prejudice whatsoever unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And I think that's what I'm speaking about, oneness, is that we are one human family. In fact, one of our Dakota teachings says we must not rest till we make everybody we know a brother, sister, mother, father, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, grandma, grandpa, niece, nephew. And that's how I feel myself about the entire human family. We must not rest until we make everybody a relative. Then we'll know exactly how to treat them. We're at a place really where people are finally beginning to wake up. The herd of one is the herd of all because of this war in Ukraine. They're beginning to see the prices go up. They're beginning to feel it for the first time. But usually many people talk about how we care and love all the people of the world. Oh, poverty's terrible. But the fact is that every 4 seconds we've been on this call, a human being dies from starvation. While those super rich are increasing. So the system is in the need of a great, great overhaul. And I think that plant medicine, these sacred ceremonies, when done with respect and honor, and the person who's doing them really knows what they're doing, have tremendous, and I believe are a blessing from our Creator. Because really, the mineral people, the power and cohesion of unity. They give us our foundation, our bones, the water that goes through our brain. The plant people, they show their reciprocity right away to us. They breathe in oxygen, breathe in carbon dioxide, breathe in oxygen. But they have the power and spirit of growth. We are one with the plant people. The plant people, relatives, they know where the pain is, as well as our animal relatives and our human relatives. All of them are a part of the sacred circle of life, and all of them are to be respected and honored. And that's why I believe when people speak to these plants, we can speak to the plants. The plants do heal us. Each one of them has a special gift to give us. Every illness that in this Mother Earth, the elders say, there's a plant to remedy it. Some of these other crazy things they're creating in labs, I don't know, but
yeah. So that's great.
So that's what I'd like to offer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Belinda or Ariana, do you have anything to say about that or anything else?
I really like Brother Phil's comments, and it makes me think about, this dualistic society that we live in. There's always good and bad and right and wrong. And, if we're really going to shift this narrative, we really need to change and be mindful of the words that we use, and I think that's got a lot to do with our own inner healing and where we're coming from. One of the things that I typically do is when I go out and I talk to universities or to professionals working in this space, that's one of the things that I always come up, because sometimes I'm not intentionally harsh about my words, but I'm pointed about my words. And I always, mention to folks at the very beginning, if there's something that you're feeling from my words, whether it's, your disagreement, take a little bit of time to sit with that feeling and ask yourself, where is that coming from? I think if each and every one of us can do that in everything that we do, it helps in that healing process of the collective. And it's not just the collective. Recently a lot of the newer science, the quantum physics has come out with the multiverse and the motherverse, and this whole dimension of science that is coming out. And it's not something new to Indigenous people. We've always known that. In Western science, I think it's only getting to a point where they've got the instruments to measure those things. And so, it's really important that we heed the warnings and the lessons that have been learned through history of the Indigenous people. We're all in this together.
Beautiful. Thank you. Ariana, do you want to follow up on any of that?
Yeah, I think last thing I'll add to this is, again, when we're looking at how do we move forward and how do we really come together as one, I'll just emphasize that it does start with the individual in the beginning. So when we can look at ourselves, when we can ask ourselves, okay, why do I feel this tension between this individual and myself? When I finding myself judging this person, is there a part of myself that I'm seeing reflected that I'm judging in the external? And so the more we can start to heal these different parts of ourselves, it makes it easier for us to begin to embrace those of us who we may on the surface view as different, but really at our souls, as Chief Phil has spoken to so eloquently, we're the same. We're not any different than one another, and we're actually one another. And I think to follow up on that, it's also really important to emphasize that healing work, it does eventually need to move beyond the individual. And so it's very easy to continue to think that, well, if I do my own healing work, then that's my role. I'll just raise my own consciousness. And there can be a lot of bypassing in that. So it's important to do our work. And it's then important to follow up that work by being a good ally out in the community, by being a good and a good member of the community who gives back and is not always looking at how can I take and serve myself, but also how can I be of service.
Yeah, essential. Anything, any further follow-ups on any of those? If so, great. I think we have time, but if not, perhaps, Marc, it's time to move to the third segment, so to speak, which would be kind of short anyway, I think, but just ask people to each sum up a little bit. What do you think? Anyone have a further kind of question about what we've been talking about so far?
I have one more question that I'd like to put up.
Great.
If I may.
Of course.
I think it's important, and it's something that comes up a lot in the work I've been doing in this work. And it's Ariana, you had mentioned cultural appropriation. And I'm curious as to how we can adopt in a great way these ancient cultures in a way that shows respect, reverence, and a connection to all things without being seen as being appropriated or being seen as a negative thing. How do we honor that in a good way?
Anyone want to take that one?
I think that was actually my statement. I talk on this topic quite a bit. And the way that I like to approach is I like to approach it from a cultural appreciation rather than appropriation. And I think that's really the narrative that we need to take. And part of that is educating ourselves about cultures that we don't understand, and really taking the time to really build a connection and a relationship with them. It's something we've been talking about. And a great example of that I like to share with people are land acknowledgements. I know that in Canada, that's one of the things that is really encouraged. Here in the States, not so much. And I'm really telling people that if you really want to build relationships with Indigenous people, Native American people in the States, is, take the time to write a land acknowledgement, and don't come from here, come from your heart. And really understand the people, take the time to go to their communities, understand what are some of their health challenges, what are their issues, and how can I go about being a good ally. And that's how I like to approach this particular topic, and invite people to learn about other cultures. And then it doesn't feel so threatening that way. It's just like one of the questions that always comes up is, I feel like I'm cultural appropriating when I'm burning sage, And, we talk a little bit and we explore that a little bit more. And, I ask questions like, where do you think the sage come from? And, how is it harvested? How is it picked? And you only take what you need. So I use it as really an opportunity to learn so that they can take that into their own lives. Because when you really think about it, all of us are indigenous wherever our ancestors came from. And part of this journey, I think that we are all going through as a human family is really remembering those cultures and really finding our own way that's going to work for us in this space.
Yeah.
I love the cultural appreciation. From a language perspective, that beautifully said. Thank you, Belinda.
Yeah. And it is a really sensitive issue for non-natives, myself included. Like, for example, my sister's ex-boyfriend is a Cree native from the prairies of Canada and learned Haida carving when he was a young man. And he carved this, what do you call it, bolo thing for me. But when I was thinking about putting it on today, I thought, well, he did it for me and it's my totems, So, but the other side of my brain was coming up with like, well, I'm going to be speaking with 3 Indigenous people here, and I hope they don't think I'm like trying to be, too native or like a weekend Indian or something ridiculous, Do you know what I mean? So I think a lot of people, and so that's why it's really good. I think that what you said, Ariana, earlier about don't be afraid to make mistakes, if you're coming from the heart and being humble about it, right? Yeah. Anyway, do you want to comment also on the cultural appreciation or appropriation issue? Ariana?
Yeah, this is something that comes up a lot in my community and in the conversations that I have with folks. And I think Belinda spoke to a lot of really important points. And one thing I'll add to follow up on is something that I often like to suggest to folks, if they're wanting to burn sage or work with some different medicines. How can you source them in a way that is respectful of the cultures that you're borrowing them from? So what I always like to tell folks here is that can you go find some powwows? And people are always like, oh, am I allowed at them? And I tell them, if you're not allowed at them, you won't find them. Like the ones that are being advertised on Facebook, you're welcome to go to. And oftentimes there are folks selling medicines that they've grown. You can talk to the individual who grew it. You can learn about it. And then that money is going back into that community. So that's a really beautiful way of doing it. Even, cacao is a medicine that I love to work with, and I'm always very mindful of where I source it from. I really want to know how are the workers and like basically what is the process going from being all through hand into being packaged, and not going and buying sage from, metaphysical shops wrapped in plastic that are sourced from California, shipped and packaged in China, and then sent back somewhere else, right? Like there are ways to be more conscious of doing this. And that's usually what I would like to offer to folks who are asking.
Great question, by the way, Marc, I think.
Well, thanks. It's just something that comes up since, I've been in this work a lot, and, I've gone through my own growth and inner work just in regards to this, just because of some of the comments and feedback we got from the conference over the years. And, with great honor and respect, I'm always curious as how do we, do this in a way that is respectful, honoring, and I just love the word appreciation that really hit home for me. And to really be able to communicate that in a better way. And sourcing and things, Ariana, I think is just fantastic, which makes a lot of sense. So thank you for clarifying how we can do that even better.
So now I think we should finish up relatively soon. And what I'd like to do is call on each of you to say, a couple more things just to sort of sum up anything you feel that you want to add to this or, kind of an overall view or summation or anything like that. And as part of that, if there is anything that you would like people to know about how to contact you or some resources you would like them to check out, please throw that into the mix as well. So Ariana, would you like to lead off with that?
Sure. Thank you. I think the last thing that I want to say is to acknowledge that a lot of these things can feel really, really big. So when we're talking about a planet in crisis and helping everybody remember that we are all connected with one another, when we're talking about decolonization, these can feel like so big that it can almost make it easier to just not feel like we need to do anything. Like, what can I do? How can I contribute? How can I make a difference in something that is so big? And I just want to remind everybody that what we do on the micro is reflected in the macro. There is such a ripple effect with our actions. By being willing to have one difficult conversation with an individual in your life, perhaps that opens up their perspective and maybe they behave a little bit differently in an interaction, which influences somebody else. We never know where our work is going to spread out into the world. So I really just want to emphasize that every single thing that you do matters and is of importance, and to not let the size of the tasks that are currently at hand discourage you from feeling as though you're capable of making a change, because you most certainly are. And so again, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity here, Miigwech, for having me. And I really look forward to connecting with everyone at the conference. If you want to get in touch, have a conversation, ask some questions, you can reach me through my website. My name is a little bit difficult to spell, but you can find me at arianafotinakis.com and just drop me a message through there. And I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Great. And that's Fotinakis. I don't mind taking the time to spell it. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So since Phil began, I'd like to let him do the closing remarks as well and have ask Belinda to do her summation first.
You know, one of the things that we all touched on, I think, is, and that I wanted to expand on it just a little bit, is about the topic of reciprocity. Right now, we're in a space where we've got a lot of companies that are doing investments with regards to synthetics in this space. And a lot of times I get, pulled aside and people are asking, how can we show reciprocity? And I want people to be mindful about how they choose to go and help the Indigenous peoples that are the guardians and stewards of these medicines. For example, it might not be wise to just give them monetary resources. Maybe one of the things that they're doing is they're rebuilding their cultural program and really, really trying to restore their language. Maybe there's something that you can help in that space with them so that it benefits the entire community. And the other thing is a concept in Indigenous cultures, which is the cycle of life from birth to birth. And I think in business, our business models are really about production and producing a certain gadget. And we usually think of that from cradle to grave, and we don't think about the entire process and how we can benefit and use that to its most beneficial use. And so we got to be also mindful about those models that we use and include the reciprocity piece as part of that modeling.
Thank you. And Phil, we'd like to give you the last word on today's conversation, except for Marc and I closing up. Oh, we're not hearing you again. Oh, there we are. Yeah.
First of all, I want to say these two beloved sisters are so brilliant. They're so bright. My gosh, they're so full of great things to hear them share and all the questions. I want to just share a prayer to close this off myself. Creator of the universe, most beloved one, all-powerful one, most kind one, most compassionate one, ever-forgiving one. O Ancient of Days, O best beloved, we call upon your holy power this time to come and surround all our beloved ones who are coming to join us at this wonderful gathering where we're going to explore all these sacred plant medicines. We give you thanksgiving for all the good things you brought us, and these sacred medicines we ask to be treated with the utmost respect in the sacred way they're given, and the sacred healing they do. We call upon all the tribes and nations of the east, from where comes the red sunrise, the south, from where comes new life, the west, from where comes the thunder, lightning, and rain, the north, from where comes the white snow and Father Sky and Mother Earth, to come together in unity and honor, to support and give our full spiritual energy that that those that attend this conference, those who attend it on Zoom, however they touch it, will be touched with healing, will be touched with oneness, will be touched with happiness and joy. Haole michante washtelo, shunk manu he meado, chunupa sapa he meado, haole michante washte, aho.
Aho. Thanks so much, Phil. And thank you to all three of you. I completely agree with you, and I'm sure Marc does, Phil, that your two companions here are wonderful and brilliant with the things that they have shared today. I'm going to let Marc have the very final word, but before that, I just want to say, I could ask you, the three of you, just to stick around for a minute or two after we finish the recording. And also, when Marc is able to send that to you, please share wildly. We're still looking to put more people into the conference, and so we need all the help we can get with that. And I think Marc,
watching this live, if you're watching this at any time between now and the conference, there's a code you can save 25% with the code SAVE25. It's really simple. So we want to make sure that it's affordable for everyone, and that we're passing that on as well. So,
and where do they go for that, Marc?
Go for what?
To apply that password.
Well, spiritplantmedicine.com, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It's there. We just want to make sure that people have that available to them.
Yes. And I'd like to say the same thing to anyone watching who gets to watch or listen to this, that please help spread the word so we can bring this powerful community together, because this is going to be a remarkable event and very important. I feel that we can easily say that without any kind of boasting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing I wanted to say and share is really an invitation to you, Belinda, Ariana, and Chief Phil. You know, if you ever wish to share your voice or share something that comes up for you, you have an open invitation to us and our platforms at any time. We'd be happy to share your voice, your work, your message to our community whenever that need may strike you. I just want to know that we're open always.
Good. Okay.
All right.
You.
We are complete, I guess. Is that right, Stephen?
Yeah. And as I say, let's just, stick around for a couple of minutes after, just to make sure amongst ourselves we're clear on everything. And I was hoping, I don't know, did Phil disappear? Because I noticed he...
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Oh, because we wanted to talk to him about something, but I'll catch up with him later.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, come and meet Belinda, Ariana, and Chief Phil live in person, Spirit Plant Medicine Conference in really a few short days. It's about 10 days away, November 4th, 5th, and 6th at UBC. We look forward to seeing you there. Thanks, everyone.